welcome back to episode 74 of the Half Swing Shinty podcast, where we review and preview the week's Shinty from all over Scotland. In the week that Boris Johnson was prevented from building a new pool due to the presence of newts, there was lots of great Shinty. And to go through it all with me, I have a man who's known for his orange belly and his warty skin. It's Cammy Middleton. Cammy, how are you getting on, and what's your favourite amphibian?
Yeah, I'm good, Ian. Glad to be back. It's been a couple of weeks now, isn't it? So yeah, glad to be back and talking Shinty. Probably your strangest opening question. I can't lie to you, yeah, but I'll play along as I always do. Favourite amphibian, probably a frog. Why not? Always fun when you see one cutting about. Not so fun when you're trying to cross a road and you're swerving to avoid them. But yeah, favourite amphibian, frog. There you go.
Okay, wow, yeah, that'll be one for the ages, no doubt there. What did you get up to at the weekend just past?
Good weekend for me. Well, good weekend bar the obvious doing we received off Inveraray on Saturday. The less said about that, the better. But I had a fun Saturday night and a fun Sunday. I'm not a golfer myself, but had a golf day with my mates. Ended up playing better than expected. Still miles behind everyone else, and got some funny looks off regulars at the course. But it was a class day out. We try and get into golf a wee bit more in the future. Apparently, it's what is it? Fancy word when like. Could forget that.
No, not a chance this is coming out, by the way. You better keep thinking, Sam.
Not reversible. When you like
Oh, transferable.
Transferable.
That is not coming out, by the way. This is definitely staying in.
Apparently, Shinty is a transferable skill to golf. There we go. What a start to the podcast talking about amphibians. Oh, God's sake!
I think a lot of Shinty players I know play golf already, but you are really living up to the title middle class maestro, aren't you? I think I'm going to start getting into golf a bit more. Gee whiz,
you just chucked this on me out of nowhere. I'm not enjoying it one bit.
Any plans for this week?
I'm off to Manchester on Friday. My new boss is a big Man United fan and has kindly organised a work day out watching Man United and RC Lens from France on Saturday. Hospitality tickets too, which is nice.
Wow.
You'll know fine well after the Ballymore final. I certainly enjoy a bit of hospitality. Obviously not helping the middle class maestro nickname there, but good weekend ahead for me. Guessing you'll be having a quiet one after a mental 2 weekends.
Yeah, it's been a pretty rough couple of weeks. Obviously at Belgium at the weekend, a festival up here. Maybe talk a little bit more about that later. I don't really have it in me to talk about it just now. It's too soon. Maybe next week's podcast. But no, it was good. And obviously I was over in Ireland with the under-17s, which was, not too mental, but yeah, certainly taxing looking after 17 under-17s. But no, I'm not. Well, I'm having a quiet one. Yeah, I'm just out for a pizza. One of my friends is over from Dublin, so that'll be nice on Saturday. But I am actually, unfortunately, working on Saturday at the Telecoms Camanachd Cup semi-final. So it's not all good. You've got to take swings and roundabouts. The good news is, because I'm working, I'll probably miss County getting turned over by Celtic, which is, I think, the 12:30 game on Sky, with the season starting this weekend. Yeah.
That's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Not ideal. But listen, enough about the football. Let's move on to the Shinty. And as always, we'll start with the feeling news. And normally I would let you get things underway, but I am going to start this week because otherwise they would be further down the pecking order and they simply deserve to be first. I want to talk about Lewis Camanachd. Lewis Camanachd have been on fire lately, and after Saturday's result, they've now won an impressive 7 games in a row. Not only that, but across those 7 games, they've beaten everyone in the top half of the league, including Caberfay, and on Saturday just past, they comfortably beat league leaders Lacharen, dominating the game and securing a resounding 5-0 victory. Goals came from Paul Duke, Donald Lamont, Callum McCritchie, and a double from Donny McRae, and they all played a pivotal role in securing what was a huge win for Lewis. This kind of performance from Lewis, I guess it's kind of testament to the hard work and dedication that's been put in from both the players and coaching staff. We've spoken about it a lot on the podcast, just how much commitment it takes to be an island club Obviously limited resources and for all Shinty clubs, and those resources having to be spent on ferries, bus travel once you get over to the mainland, hours and hours just to play your nearest game. Rising to second place in the league with all that, it's absolutely no small feat, and they've proven that they are forced to be reckoned with. They're now just 2 points behind Lachlan at the top of the league, and although Lachlan have a game in hand, it is clear that Lewis are going to be hot on their heels for the rest of the season. I think it's safe to say I probably built Lewis up a good bit there. The last thing I want to do is bring them back down to earth, but I just can't see Lachlan losing the 2 games they would need to for Lewis to do the unthinkable and win the league. Caberfay could potentially take points from them on the 26th of August at Castle Loud. That certainly is not out the question, but I just can't see any of the other sides they've got left to play managing to do it. That being said, they do play Strathglass on the last day of the season, and the boys from Camanachd managed to hold them to a draw in the reverse leg, so you never know. What the 5-0 scoreline from Saturday did do for Lewis was really swing the goal difference in their favour, with the Islanders now on plus 21 compared to I think it's plus 9, is it? Let me double check. I probably should have written that down. But anyway, they've got plus 21, which is remarkably more than what Lachlan have. So I think that there is a half chance there for Lewis. Do I think, gun to my head, that they can do it? No, I don't think Lachlan will drop that many points, but I just wanted to give them a big congratulations because, now that they've beaten the league leaders, there's no telling where this run could stop. They could keep it going right the way to the end of the season. And even if they don't then go ahead and get promoted, what an incredible run to be on and momentum to have going into 2024. I backed Caberfay at the start of the season, which now looks quite unlikely for them. Just 4% of people went for challengers Lewis, Cammy, but who did you go for?
I think in North 2, I went for Aberdeen Uni, actually. Which now I think they're mid-table right now, which probably looks like a kind of silly prediction, but I think it was quite an educated one. I think quite a few maybe would have backed them as well, because I think they had a quite decent campaign last season, and I think they're maybe one of the favourites to do it this season. It's obviously just not worked out well for them. Lachlan would have probably been a very, very good guess to go up as well. Looking back, Caberfay was obviously quite an educated guess, but I mean, I don't think many people were backing Lewis, and I think you touched on it very well there. Like, I won't add too much, but I'd go as far as saying Lewis's form this season could be one of the best stories in Shinty. I'd honestly go that far for a newish island side who haven't really lit up the world in terms of results in recent memory, to gain the amount of numbers and support they've shown this season on the island and to perform consistently against tough opposition, and not only perform, thrash teams as well, is incredible. They've got a big squad, a big future ahead of them, and I feel like we'll be seeing Lewis and North win in the very near future.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, Cammy. But what else do you want to talk about?
I shall move on, and I'll move south like I always do. And something that caught my eye was Col Glen finally getting the better of Inveraray in their 100th time of asking, it seemed. In all seriousness, this was the 4th time the two have met this season, with Aray winning all 3 previous encounters, and the 2 times the two met last year as well. But it was finally Col Glen's chance to get one over them, and in my eyes, I thought this was going to be one of the more one-sided Inveraray performances out of the 6 meetings the past 2 seasons. Prior to throw up, and I know Aray were going to be pretty much at full strength, bar maybe 1 or 2 suspensions, and I know they'd be keen to keep tabs and promotion. I also know that Col Glen were short again, although Jamie McVicker returned from suspension. I think they only fielded 12 with no subs for this tie, which is pretty amazing considering they got the result. Scott McVicker's early strike was the difference between the two. Well, I say that was the difference. I think all those at the Winterton knew it was Col Glen goalkeeper Scott Simons who was the difference, who apparently had a ridiculously good performance between the sticks. He made a series of unreal saves, including denying Fraser Watt from the penalty spot, with Aray going on to miss another penalty later on in the game too. Col Glen mega fan and former player Ewan Morley described Scott's performance as one of the best goalkeeper performances he's ever seen, which only shows how good it must have been. I wasn't there, obviously. I was too busy getting a doing off Inveraray seconds an hour down the road. But it seemed like a brilliant day for Col Glen, who now sit 5th. Aray, one above them, will probably now concede that they'll be playing National Shinty next year. It definitely seems like it's been a season of if, buts and maybes for the Mid-Argyll men. They clearly possess quality, but consistency has been the issue for them this year, I reckon. But yeah, big win for Col Glen, and a really frustrating loss for Inveraray.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think that's probably the final nail in their promotion hopes, just with so many other strong teams. I mean, you look at the league, it is only 2 points, I think, still between them and second place, maybe 3. But when you look at the teams that are below them, Kilmally, I think, have only played 8. They've got plenty of games in hand. They'll rise. Fort William are in a really good run of form just now. They look like they're throwing their hat in the ring. And of course, we've still got Lochaber and Glenacher up there too. Then I think that probably will just kill them off, unfortunately. But they'll go again next year. And I guess it's a small slice of happiness for you that Inveraray didn't do the double last weekend after what the seconds did down at Strucker.
Very, 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 very small slice of happiness. I think the damage was already done, mate.
I opened the podcast by speaking about a team that has shot up the table over the last few weeks, so I think it would be a disservice if I didn't speak about the other one, Kyle's Athletic. Fresh from a huge win against Newtonmore at Tina Bruach, the 2012 Camanachd Cup winners have now won 4 consecutive games in the league. And as we know, a run like that is more than enough to shoot you up the table and away from danger in what is an incredibly competitive division. Now, it probably speaks more to our unreliable podcasting over the summer months than anything else, but the episode just 2 weeks ago, 2 episodes ago, started with Kyle's edge out of relegation zone. Now they're as close to Canusie at the top as they are to Bewley in 9th place, and they seem capable of beating anyone in the league, with the exception maybe of the champions. Centre and friend of the podcast, Ross McRae, has 6 goals since Kyle's last defeat, while Connor Kennedy and Scott McDonald continue to impress. Roddy's positional change, Roddy McDonald that is, into the centre seems to, really have helped the team's structure and had done them a world of good. And he's been singled out for individual praise, both online and, of course, in the newspapers over the past 6 weeks. On a personal note, it's been great to see Will Cowie's name on the score sheet a little bit less over the last few weeks. I had enough Kyle's propaganda to take over a small country whilst I was over in Ireland, so the quieter he is, the better. Overall, though, it's been a great run in the league for Kyle's, although I do suspect they'll still be a little disappointed that they weren't able to turn that league form into a cup semi-final appearance, especially the defeat to GMA in the Macaulay, albeit they ran Lovat very close in the Camanachd as well, so they'll probably be just equally disappointed about that. But my question to you, Cami, is Kyle's are currently 4 points behind Canusie, having played a game more, but with a potential points deduction looming for the champions according to social media, did we declare the season over too soon?
See, I was just about to jump the gun there and say no, but then I totally forgot about the potential points deduction which is coming, which could swing things. Have we declared it over too soon? I'll say no, but not as a convincing no, and that is basically down to Kingusie's ability and Kingusie's performances and their future performances, I suspect, as well, which I think I will get into quite shortly. But I mean, in terms of Kyle's, they're playing like a team possessed right now. They're showing that they are actually very, very difficult to beat at home. It's kind of the saying in Shinty, you've got to go down to Tinnabrook to beat them and things like that. But the home form over the past couple of seasons has been quite inconsistent. Right now, no, they're winning a lot at home and they're playing very, very good Shinty there as well. And I think they're playing as good as Shinty, and everyone in the kind of Premiership knows like what they're capable of in that sense. Relegation dogfight to third in a space of a few weeks is nothing short of incredible. Numbers might have been on their side, but as you mentioned, the kind of positional changes as well. We always say it. We say it that they're a cup team. They say that on their day when they have their kind of 12 out that they want, they can cause teams problems. It's been a question of have they been actually able to do that, and especially in the kind of the Camanachd Cup defeat at the hands of Lovat. That'll be an absolute sickener. And in all honesty with you, I thought that was going to be a case of then Kyle's going on to maybe kind of end the season maybe poorly, because that's the amount of the cup competition, not an awful lot to play in the Premier League, but they've done the complete opposite. They've bounced back and they've turned their season around and they're playing some of the best Shinty they've played in the last few years, I'd say anyway, so fair play to them.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do you want to talk about then, Cami?
Touch on it very, very briefly there. I'll continue in the Premiership and I'll continue with Kingussie, who are now finally the league leaders on course to win another Premiership title. I think the question of the points deduction kind of looms over them, but we won't get into that too much if that happens in the next few weeks, and obviously that's going to be a big point of discussion. But right now they're sitting top. Newtonmore's lost to Kyle's, as we mentioned there, alongside Kingussie's very tough and narrow victory away from home at Oban Camanachd was enough to shoot them into pole position, still level on points with Newtonmore, but 4 games in hand. The only real competition in the league for now is probably themselves. They've got a straight path to victory, but they do still need to play 8 games in the league, which is still plenty of time to mess things up, you could argue. They've also been winning games by very slender margins recently. 2-1 against Oban, 2-1 against Skye, 1-0 against Lovat. Now, some may see that as a bit lucky. Me personally, I'm thinking about how solid Kingusie's defence must actually be as they continue to come up against some of the best forward lines in Shinty and still continue to keep the scoreline down to very low numbers. That's even if the opposition can get onto the score sheet. They say defence wins you championships, and I feel like that's the difference between this Kingussie team to last year's, who tended to just kind of blow teams away with the forward line, which obviously included Roddy Young. Kingussie, I think they've got the best defence in Shinty, only conceded 8 in the league so far, which is 6 less than the next best defence in the division, which is Lovat. And it looks like, if everything goes to plan, this defence could be marshalling Kingussie to their 3rd Premiership title in a row and their 15th since the Premiership was introduced in the late 90s, which will potentially make it 15 out of a possible 25 if you include the 3 unplayable seasons, twice due to COVID and once due to the change into summer Shinty. However, there's still a lot of Shinty left to be played, so maybe it is too early to call, but right now I'm still backing Kingussie.
Yeah, no, I think we touched upon it maybe at the end of the last question. It's jumped the gun a little bit there, but I don't think that there's really anyone. I was saying, could Kyles potentially catch them? I don't think that anyone will match Kingusie's results, let alone better them between now and the end of the season. And yes, Kingussie have a lot of games left, and there's, like you say, there is still the chance to mess it up, but I just can't see it. They're too experienced. Now, I mean, before they would maybe had labelled at them in the cap competitions that they didn't have that experience to get it over the line. They proved that wrong last year with a Grand Slam win, and we know it's factual that they have the experience in the league. They've done it in 2019, they've done it in 2022. They were winning their league in 2021 during the COVID season. So I do think that Kingussie will still win the league. But yeah, the games are a lot tighter, which makes it a little bit more exciting for the neutral, I would say. You were right to point that out there. The final thing I wanted to talk about actually happened when I was over in Ireland, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it on the podcast yet. Although actually, yeah, let me just quickly touch on Ireland. I want to say a big well done and thanks to all of the under-17s who travelled over to Ireland to take part in the Aray Cruden Tour of Ireland. Great bunch of guys from, I think, 8 different clubs, and they did well in both matches, securing the win on Monday night and then competing well against the All-Ireland runners-up on the Tuesday. I was speaking to the coaches of Kilkenny after the game on Tuesday night, and he told me that their under-17s train 5 nights a week. 1 night solo in the gym, 1 team gym session, and then 3 grass sessions outside, and that each player has an individualised training and nutritional plan. Incredible levels of dedication, and I just found that really eye-opening and something that really we should be aspiring to at our own level, at that top level. But anyway, I've gone off tangent big style there. What I wanted to talk about was the women's finalists being confirmed. We will deal with the Challenge Cup first. There's not too much to say about Kinlochshiel's incredible 16-0 win over Camanachd, other than, it truly was incredible. And it just goes to show that there probably is still quite a gap between North 2 and South 2 at the moment, because Camanachd have been absolutely splendid in the majority of their other games this season. But congratulations, Mascota Shield, for making another final. I know just how keen they are to retain the trophy, and they'll have the chance to do that against Inverness B as they overcame a spirited Glengarry 5-2 in the other semi. An Elaine Carmen double was cancelled out thanks to a fantastic 5 goals from mercurial talent Isla McNeil. Now that looks like a really tasty final, with probably the 2 best teams in North 2 going head-to-head. Obviously, Kinlochshiel will be favourites, having already defeated Inverness this year, but you just never know. Elsewhere in the Maui Valerie Fraser Camanachd Cup, there were 2 fantastic games. Firstly, congratulations to Glasgow Mid Argyll, who overcame newly promoted Glenuckert 6-3 to make their first Camanachd final since winning the competition in 2015. Both Joan Nicholson and Lucy McNulty hit an impressive hat-trick in that game to power them through to the final. The other semi-final saw a major shock as Skye dumped Holders Badenoch out of the cup. Competition top scorer Sarah Yoxon's double, cancelling out goals from Zoe Reid and Megan Rolfe. That meant that Donna McKenzie and Rihanna Kirk's goals would send Skye through to the final again. This was a real shock for me, considering Badenoch had just won 9-3 7 days earlier. However, that result means we will have the first Maui Valerie Fraser Camanachd Cup final without Badenoch since 2017. And it probably also means the gulf in quality between the two sides in the final will be far less. I spoke to co-manager Ian Robinson after the game to ask him what went wrong, and he said that, Sky just wanted it much more. So a real incredible turnaround from them to go from losing 9-3 to winning and going through to the final. So yeah, I wish them and all the teams playing in the final in September the best of luck. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
This podcast is sponsored by Tallaght Homes, proud partners of the Camanachd Association. Like the game of Shinty, Tallaght Homes has strong Highland roots and a heritage going back over 95 years. The superior finishes and high-quality fittings in every Tallaght home, together with fresh contemporary interiors and energy-saving features, mean you're assured of an attractive, well-built home. For a great choice of homes in the best locations in Scotland, simply search Tallaght Homes online or follow them on social media.
It would now be time for Kick Tip Corner, Cami. However, I was otherwise incapacitated or maybe otherwise inebriated to put the games up due to a certain Highland Music Festival. However, no games mean that you did not drop any further down the table, Cami, so you must be happy with that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you being miraculous suited me very well. Saved me another week of Shinty embarrassment. Did have a wee sneak peek of this week's fixtures, and to be honest, they're looking hard ones again. So I think it's just that time of year when teams have a lot to play for. So probably another poor week in store for me. So it was a nice wee break.
Yeah, the good news is you're really optimistic about it. I don't want to take it too much back to football, but are you playing Fantasy Football Scotland this year, or was the one dance with me in FPL last year enough for you?
One dance was enough for me. I don't have the kind of I can't play. Like once it gets to October, I'm done with it. I don't have the kind of attention span for it, if you will. Nothing to do with you beating me though. Nothing to do with that.
No, okay, right. We better move on. What do you want to talk about in terms of game of the week then, Cammy? What are you thinking?
So, in our usual confusing formatting of this podcast, I went for my game of the week, as well as also agreeing that there's arguably a bigger candidate for game of the week, which I'll need to touch on. That's obviously this Saturday's Camanachd Cup semi-final between Camanachd and Kingussie, which no doubt is the biggest game of Shinty this weekend. Everyone outside one part of Badenoch will be bored to tears of my Kingussie loving on the podcast recently, and I touched on that detail earlier, so I won't go on, but it's safe to say this is a huge fixture this weekend, which should go on to tell who be crowned this year's champions in Inverness in September. I reckon Kinlochshield's season will rest solely on this game, and they've been looking very good up until their two mishaps recently, one of which including Kingussie's Macaulay Cup semi-final win over Kinlochshield the other week. Shield will now need to be at their absolute best to beat Kingussie, but the way they've been playing, you wouldn't be surprised to see Kingussie once again booking their place into the Camanachd Cup final. Massive game in store for Shinty fans on Saturday, no doubt, but it's not my game of the week. My game of the week is shock horror in the south of Scotland, where the best of Shinty is played, and to no surprise, it's also in the best division in Shinty, and that is South Division 2, baby. Jokes aside, you and I love a regional league promotion battle, and we had a slight taste of one on Saturday with Lewis and Lochcarron, but realistically one was taken away from us the other weekend when GMA couldn't field a team against Buton South won, and Newtonmore seemed to be clear favourites to win the league again in North 2. However, Tayforth are travelling to Lochilphead on Saturday in a first v second battle at the top of South 2. Kilmorey have been running away with the league and are level in points with Tayforth and boast 2 games in hand, which would look like they're clear favourites to go up this year. The catch is that Tayforth and Kilmorey still need to play each other in the league twice this year, and the first meeting between the two commences on Saturday. If the men from the capital can field their strongest team, including the likes of Ewan Menzies, Brendan Duggan, Duncan Martin, then they will cause Kilmorey problems, but I do feel like Kilmorey will have a wee bit too much firepower from them up front for Tayforth, and will probably go on to win this potentially league-deciding clash. Regardless, massive game in South 2. I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcome. I love a kind of competitive league clash, and I think South 2 has been pretty competitive at points this season, and it's maybe not looking like Kilmorey are running away from it as you'd expect. With Tayforth, we've got a big chance to kind of claw them back, if you will. So yeah, huge game. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right to note that I did ask you for our game of the week, and once again, you've given me two. I think one week you gave me three, though. So let's deal
I'm
with them
quite
one at a time.
indecisive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely are. Well, I'll deal with the first one you mentioned first, which is obviously the huge Telecoms Camanachd Cup semi-final. I said a couple of weeks ago that I thought Kinlochshiel would win one of the three games against Canusi. Now, obviously, you mentioned there that they lost the Macaulay semi, which would have been a real sore one for them to take. But there's no better remedy than winning in the Telecoms Camanachd Cup semi-final this weekend. Of course, this is by far the biggest of the three clashes. I'll be there on Saturday, like I mentioned, working. I did go against Canusi on kick tip for the Macaulay and it backfired on me. So I think I'm going to have to back them this week just to make sure that I can keep pace with the leaders and keep it exciting for myself coming into the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks of the season. On Kilmorey versus Tay Forth, I think it's been really impressive, the string of performances that Tay Forth have managed to put together. And they've begun to slowly but surely have a chance, at least, to reel in Kilmorey. That being said, Kilmorey still have 2 games in hand, like you mentioned. So I make this actually a must win for Tay Forth. I know they've got to play them again, but I think if they've got any ambition of returning to Maui South Division 1 this year, then they need to win this game. A draw probably would be enough for Kilmorey to see it over the line, in my opinion, even if they lose that other game. They have only lost 1 game, I think it is, all season. Against the mighty Stracher Dunoon, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
So, yeah, for them to drop points another 3 times, it seems highly unlikely. I'll be back in Kilmorey. I think as impressive as Tay Forth have been, Kilmorey are currently just a step above that. And that has been made clear by the performances this season and indeed their performance in the single team cup final against a much stronger on paper Glengarry side. But will we chat about another couple of games before we wrap up, Kami? Which game did you find most difficult to predict this week?
There was definitely a lot, but the hard to predict for me this week is the semi-final of the Sutherland Cup, particularly Kinlochshiel's clash with Newtonmore at Speenbridge, which was also probably another candidate for game of the week, which would have been 3 games a week in my game of the week. But going to be a cracker of the semi-final in store. When you think Sutherland Cup, you'd be forgiven for thinking that it's Newtonmore to lose. They've won 5 of the last 7 cups and weren't actually involved in the other 2 finals, meaning they've got a 100% record in Sutherland Cup finals in the past 5 times they've made it that far. However, the question of will they make it this year is seriously in the air, and as they're matched up against a Kinlochshiel side who have had their number at points this season and last, with Shield beating Newtonmore in the Strathdairn semi in Newtonmore's backyard, with Shield coming away 3-1 winners not so long ago. So what you've got is a team who have the ability to beat Newtonmore and Kinlochshiel, who have already proved it this season and the odd time last season for that matter, up against a team who are probably the favourites to win the Sutherland Cup every year recently, and the record shows that they are experts in this competition. Very, very tough one to pick. I'm slightly leaning towards Newtonmore because Shield first do have that bumper Camanachd Cup semi-final, which will maybe limit the amount of fringe first-team players able to make the journey down to Speenbridge on Saturday. But I think regardless, it's going to be an absolutely cracking semi-final, so I'm really looking forward to that one. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit basically all of the notes that I'd made on that game perfectly. I think that the fact that Shield have such a big game, like you said, means that the players that are between the first team and second team will be up in Inverness, and that might just be the difference when coming up against, sort of imperious Newtonmore side, the all-time record holders of the Sutherland Cup, the last 2 winners of the Sutherland Cup, 5 times in the last 7 years, I think. So I'm going to have to back Newtonmore in this one. They've been unreal in this competition over the last few years, and I just cannot see that changing. But I'm glad you went for Kinlochshiel versus Newtonmore because I've gone for the sister tie, Glenacher versus Skye. Skye, they have the edge on Glenacher in terms of league position, with the Islanders challenging towards the top of the league and Glen looking a wee bit shaky towards the bottom. However, Glen have been really good in the Cup this year and boast a victory against Skye up in Portree back in April. So it certainly isn't impossible. Whenever Sutherland semis come around, I always have a look and see who the first team are playing, like I just said about Shield and Newtonmore. Excuse me. But I'm delighted to see that both teams are playing and have important games because that means we will likely see the real second teams. The Skye first currently trying to push away from the relegation zone and Glenacher first trying to extend their lead at the top of the national. If I had to choose between the two, I would say Skye probably narrowly win, probably a 2-1, but it would be absolutely no surprise if Glenurquhart managed to make the final with that extra motivation of playing the 100th anniversary final at their home ground in September. Cammy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, touched on it there. Glenurquhart maybe have that motivation to play this year's final, considering it will be at home as well. And I mean, you've also mentioned them earlier on a few weeks back in the podcast, like how kind of good they have been in terms of form, both the seconds and the firsts. I'm agreeing with you though. I'm verging towards Skye for this one. I've been impressed with them, especially recently. Signing Dan McDonald from Col Glen's been massive. I think he's scored 11 goals since joining so far, which makes him like in the top 5 goals scored in North Division 2 or North Division 1, already, which is incredible considering he joined halfway through the season. I think his firepower up front will probably be enough to kind of swerve it. But I think it's definitely one to kind of put down for hard to predict, because that can go either way. And it will be nice to see one of them in the Sutherland Cup final as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of the episode. So thank you very much for joining me, Cammy.
Thanks again, mate. Cheers.
And thank you for listening. Enjoy your shinty.